Hello, brilliant and embodied souls. My name is Kim. Welcome back to my channel. I am honored that you are here. Presumably, you've clicked on this video because you want to get to know me a little bit better. And I am honored by that. I truly am. I am somebody who has struggled to put myself out there in more like non-relational spaces, such as social media. I assume that people don't want to hear what I have to say. I assume people don't actually really want to know me. These assumptions keep me from fully expressing my creativity, fully bringing some of what I have to offer the world. So if you've clicked on this video and you want to know me, I'm just touched. I'm thoroughly touched. And in answering some of these questions that I'm about to answer, I'm stepping into some vulnerable territory for myself. I'm stepping into this intentionally. See previous comments about judgment and internalized shame and internalized assumptions that have a lot to do with my upbringing. A big reason why I'm here on TarotTube is to overcome a lot of that. Let's get into the questions that Coyote Tarot has proposed to all of us. This is, of course, a video response. It's a introduction to ourselves or potentially a reintroduction if we've done a video like this before. So because I have not, welcome to a set of questions that are going to be about me. Coyote Tarot has offered us 3 categories of questions. The questions will be listed in the description box below if you want to join in or follow along. Let's get into the first category, the basics. I'm going to be looking over here at my laptop to share the questions with all of you. The first question is, where are you from? So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. I grew up on a dairy farm, and that has provided me a lot of grounding. That has really helped me become the person who I am. However, I didn't really feel totally seen or understood in the community where I grew up. So all of what I just said probably makes a lot more sense to all of you. Now I live in Northern California, and I am developing more and more communities that help me feel seen and understood, which is fantastic. The next question, how did you come up with your YouTube name? So if you've been around my channel, you know that I'm a somatic psychotherapist. Somatic psychotherapy incorporates everything from traditional therapy, but adds on and also takes a different stance on what is going on in therapy. Somatic psychotherapy looks at a lot of the embodied, felt sense, subconscious aspects of psychotherapy that are realized vis-a-vis our body. So some of this has to do with, gestures, sensations, vocal tone, a lot of nonverbal aspects to how we know ourselves. That's one part of it. Another part is, of course, bringing more and more awareness to things that we're not always entirely aware of. Somatic psychotherapy has a lot of very unique interventions, and per my brief description, it takes some very insightful, provocative, and unique lenses to how we change, how we grow. My YouTube name, the Somatic Psychotherapist, right, like ties right into some of my interests around everything I just said. But a lot of what I just said could easily be said about the tarot, could easily be said about magic. my intention with the channel is to interweave and wind together and look at these interests of mine, psychological, somatic, magic, tarot, right? And see where there's a lot of intersection within those three areas. They have a lot in common. They have tons and tons in common. And in calling myself the somatic psychotherapist, or excuse me, the somatic sorceress, I'm gonna grow into this name. My plan when I created this name is to grow into it and grow the channel's content into the interplay of all of those things that I just mentioned. So stay tuned for that growth process. The third question, how long have you been reading tarot? So I've only really been reading tarot since 2016, 2017. I had the Wild Unknown deck when it came out mass market, but I did not put a lot of time and effort into learning the tarot at that time. I'd say my deep dive into the tarot started in 2020, which makes perfect sense, right? The year of the pandemic, but also, seeing 2020, right? I was able to more clearly see myself. And what I saw was actually a memory, or memories, I should say, of when I was a kid. And I had a deck of cards that I turned into a cartomancy deck. That's right. As a kid, like where this idea came from. Like, I mean, of course I probably saw like movies or read books or, it wasn't like totally an uninfluenced behavior or process, but as a kid I created my own divinatory meanings for a card deck that I had, and I would give cartomancy readings to my cousins, to some of my friends. So this whole tarot card thing was something that I was doing like way back, way back. And honestly, like I didn't have anybody around me where I was growing up that would have shown me anything like that. It was like a pretty inspired behavior, if I do say so myself. So this whole cartomancy thing goes back to like maybe when I was like 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Okay, how did you get into reading tarot and oracle? Well, see everything that I just shared, but I, was in a, sort of like witchy, spiritual shop, and I saw the Wild Unknown Tarot. I thought that looks really amazing. I purchased it. I also purchased maybe like an oracle deck at the time, although actually that was like later, because my very first oracle deck was the Shamanic deck by Colette Baron Reed. So that was actually published, I think, much later, like maybe to like 2028. So those were my first 2 decks. And I just saw them and I was like, what's going on with these? I think my interest in the cards as a child was reawakened at that time. So I would just mess around with those cards. Some roommates of mine had some other decks. One of my roommates had the Jungian Tarot. So I was starting to be around more people who were into a lot of what I had been into as a child. And I was like fucking around and finding out if this was something for me, and it definitely was. I actually started to do daily card pulls with the Oracle deck, not the tarot deck, but with Colette Baron Reed's deck. And that was proving to be really insightful and rich. And that continued on until 2020. And well, as I said earlier, that year really, give me a lot of space and potential to deepen my understanding of the tarot and fall down that rabbit hole. And here we are now. Do you read for others? I do read for others. I have started to offer readings, recorded readings, which you can find on my website. Those are actually starting to pick up, which is a really exciting adventure for me. I'm still fairly new in that process. I have done lots of reading for friends. I have also kind of like posted up at different spots in the Bay Area. There's like certain like parks and like a farmer's market and things kind of like that where when I was inclined and felt bold, I would just post up and have a sign that said tarot readings, and I just started to read for complete strangers, which was really, really fun. Terrifying. It was terrifying at first, but I've gotten more and more comfortable just putting myself out there as a reader, and it's been really exciting. Granted, reading for others is not my main thing. It's more of like a side gig, but I will bring the cards into my work with my psychotherapy clients if that is indicated, right? If they're into it like the way I'm into it, we'll do some card work as a part of our therapeutic process together. If you guys want a video about that, of course I have to be mindful of like confidentiality and like all that. But if you're curious about the therapeutic applications of tarot, please let me know, and maybe I will start putting together a series of videos. We're moving on to our second category of questions, and this is the decks questions. So these questions are all about our decks. Do you use Oracle with tarot? Yes, I do. I love finding perfect pairings. I am at a point where I have a fairly substantial, or at least for me, it's a substantial collection, excuse me. So I do really want to use as many decks within my collection as I can. So I love putting together multiple tarot decks and oracle decks and playing around with creative readings using multiple decks. How many decks do you have? Great question. Last I counted, I have 63 decks. Some of those decks are actually going to be rehomed soon. I think that's one of the other questions in this category, so I'll wait for that. I have 63 decks, and I am somebody who, in case it isn't clear, I'm not really a collector to have decks. Like a lot of people, I'm interested in using my decks. I want decks to have a purpose and a function within my tarot practice, whether I'm reading for others or myself. Decks really need to do something for me, as opposed to occupy space on a shelf. Where do you store your decks? So they're in this room with me. Maybe at some point I will take you on a tour of my room, but I've got a altar space, which I do intend to keep private. But underneath that space, I have all of my decks in a lovely shelf, which is, from IKEA. Okay, not necessarily like the most sacred storage. But I love it. It works for me. I figured out a nice way of displaying the decks. I'll show you guys that another time. Let me know if you want to see that. Next question. What do you look for in a deck? Ooh, okay. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because sadly, I have had some misses in terms of some recent purchases. I'd say that the entirety of my deck collecting has been very thoughtful, very intentional. I will spend time looking at walkthroughs. I will try to find interviews of the creator. I will research the deck because I want to understand where somebody is coming from with the deck, what's the point of view, and is it going to work for me? This process that I just described has fallen down a little bit as of late. Like I've been a little bit more impulsive about my decks. So what I'm really looking for is, one, a creator who has a understanding of the tarot, or if it's an oracle deck, like a creator who has some knowledge of the subject matter being presented in the oracle deck. I am looking for unique points of view. I want to have decks by creators who come from different backgrounds, who are racially, ethnically, culturally, sexually, like I want to have decks from different kinds of people and creators. That's really important to me. I also love decks that do have an esoteric bent. So decks that do help me deepen my magical practice, that's very important to me. I'd also say I lean towards decks that are, a little psychedelic in nature. I love like kind of rock and roll sort of inspired decks, like psychedelic rock. Hippie counterculture decks are a big favorite of mine. I love kind of like raw and emotive art. Something that I've come to realize about my deck collection is like if a deck is like too pretty, I tend to not use it. Like it needs to have some kind of spiritual, philosophical, or emotional or psychological like meat to it. Otherwise, I'm not especially interested. Okay, how would you describe your deck collection? I think I've alluded to that a little bit, but maybe what I also want to say at this point in time is my deck collection is really important to me. I mean, it helps me get to know myself. And I do want to have a deck collection, as I've started to read more and more for others. I also want to have a collection that serves the populations that I work with. So my collection, it's important to have diversity within my collection. It's also very important for me to have, but have it like just truly resonate with me. Because even though I have started to read more and more for others, at the end of the day, this collection is for me. And I love getting to know myself via my decks. Do you have a go-to tarot and oracle deck? I do. The Circle of Doors. I adore that deck. That is my ride or die tarot deck. Whew, that deck and me are just two little peas in a pod. We are cake and frosting, like we are chocolate and milk, like we go together so well. I do not necessarily have a go-to oracle deck, but if pressed, I would actually say the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck would be my absolute go-to oracle deck. I feel a little less strongly about that as compared to the Circle of Doors. Of course, you can tell that, but there you go. Do you rehum decks? If so, what determines if it leaves your collection? I think I alluded to this earlier. I do rehum decks. what I factor in is, when have I used the deck? Is it languishing on my shelf? If I'm not reaching for a deck, it goes into a vacation box. And like, do I pull it out of the box? Like, that's even another stage in my rehoming process. I have pulled decks out of the vacation box and started to use them again. So just because a deck goes into the vacation box does not necessarily spell doom for it in my collection. No, 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 no. But yeah, like if the deck has remained in the vacation box a lot, and then again, like it just shows that it doesn't have a place in my collection. But I'm pretty slow to rehome decks. I really don't want to be repurchasing decks. That's just not what I want for myself. So when I rehome a deck, I'm fairly certain, and at this point in time, I think I've only rehomed 2 decks. But that being said, what I alluded to earlier is I actually think I'm going to be rehoming a swath of decks coming up here pretty soon. Because I've made some purchases that haven't really worked out for me. And B, with 63 decks, it is starting to get a little overwhelming for me personally. So I do think a cull is on the horizon. Let's move into the third category of questions, and these are questions about my tarot practice more specifically. What does your tarot practice look like? Daily, locations, tools you use? When do you turn to the cards for answers? So I have a daily card practice. Of course, every once in a while, like when I'm on vacation or, just life happens, I won't do my daily pull, but I'd say 95% of the time I'm doing daily pulls. I do have a specific kind of daily pull ritual. And this is a really big part of my overall spiritual practice. There's a lot more that goes into my spiritual practice than just the daily card pull. Lima has come to join us. You may see her tail swishing back and forth. Beyond my daily practice, I'm using my cards for a lot of different stuff. I'm using my cards for deity work. I'm using my cards for magical development. I'm using them for rituals. And every once in a while, I will be inclined to do spell work. I will sometimes use the cards for spell work as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, when do you turn to the cards for answers? I turn to the cards for divinatory purposes. I'm not gonna lie. I want to know what's gonna go down. I do. Those readings are actually very difficult to conduct. But I absolutely use the cards for divination. I also definitely use the cards for personal growth and development, psychological work, 100%. And then I also use them for magical operations. So those 3 categories, they of course intersect, but I turn to the cards for a lot of different types of questions, a lot of different types of functions and purposes. And I use a lot of different lenses to work with the cards. The next question in this category is, what does a typical tarot reading look like with you or for you? Well, to me, those are 2 different questions, right? If somebody's getting a reading with me, they purchase the type of reading, or they let me know what type of reading they're sort of looking for. I do have specific types of readings on my website. So for example, I have an archetypal reading up there. So that reading looks at archetypal energies. So I do tend to lean on specific types of decks for that reading, like the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck as an example. But I'm always trying to sense intuitively and psychically, magically into what decks want to come forward for somebody else, what types of readings would best serve them. So I will sometimes do like a 9-card box spread. I will sometimes do like a diamond spread where I've got cards like a horseshoe this way and a horseshoe that way. I also do like kind of a compass type spread. Again, I use a lot of intuition with regards to what type of spread I will use for other folks. Now, for myself, I'm a big like 3-card kind of person. I love laying out 3 cards and looking at the story, looking at the narrative that the cards are presenting to me. That's a pretty big typical reading for myself, is just a 3-card draw. But again, like I'll start layering, right? Like pull 3 cards. Oh, okay, like got it. I'll pull another 3 cards. Like that enlivens the message, and then like another 3. So, I ended up with a really robust reading, building intuitively, building as questions arise for me within the reading, the sacred space of the reading. Okay, our last category is YouTube/TarotTube. Our first question in this category, what kind of content is your favorite to post and to watch? I mean, it might actually be kind of different. I don't know. I haven't really been posting long enough to say like what types of content I like to post. I mean, I'm experimenting. I'm still learning that. But heck, if you've been posting a long time, like of course that can change and shift, right? We change and shift. So right now, I do like posting reviews. I like doing more in-depth reviews. I like working with a deck for a while before I share my thoughts. I really like sharing more teacher-oriented types of videos. I realize that those aren't especially popular, but I like making that type of content. And then, of course, I just love doing tags and joining into the community aspect of TarotTube. That's very fun for me. And so, I do like watching a lot of tags. That's really awesome. I love watching walkthroughs and reviews because, as I said earlier, like that's a big part of how I decide if a deck is right for me. Like I go and look at other people's reviews. So that's an amazing type of content available because of YouTube. I don't know. I feel like I'll leave it at that for now. How did you get into creating a YouTube channel? So I had a channel a little while back, and the impetus for that channel back then is kind of the same impetus for my channel now. And that is, one, I want to put myself out into the world around the things that I love. So that's a really big part of why I started my channel back then and now. The second thing is that I've benefited so much from the content found on TarotTube, and I want to give back. I want to offer content that can help people in their tarot journeys, learning who they are, deepening their practice. That feels really inspiring to me, and I just really want to inspire other people as much as I have been inspired by all of you. There's so many really cool people creating content on TarotTube. So a third aspect to this is meeting other people who share my enthusiasm for tarot and some of the other adjacent aspects to the practice, right? Like not all tarot practitioners are magical practitioners, but there is definitely an overlap, right? And I fall into that overlap. So I'm really interested in making connections with people. Let's get into, is this the last question? Yes, this is the last question. Knowing what you know now about YouTube, TarotTube, is there anything you would do differently? I'm really trying not to look at the numbers, right? I don't want to look at my subscriber number. I don't want to look at like the views. I don't want to look at the numbers of the likes. You know, it's hard not to look at that. But what I'm trying to do, or what I want to do differently from the first time I had the channel, is I don't want to compare myself to other people. I don't want to look at these numbers. I want this to be truly creative, you know, and like if I'm being kind of totally honest with you guys, like in the limited time that I have been making videos, you know, it does feel like you know, like the more creative or the more out there, you know, some of my videos have been like some of them have gotten really positive responses, you know, meaning like lots of likes and views and such. You know, but a lot of like what I feel proud of doesn't. So I'm trying not to let any of that get into my head and influence me too much. Like, of course, it's going to influence me some in terms of what I create. You know, because there is this relationship, there is this dance between like what do people enjoy, like what do people want to see. I want to meet people where they're at. I do, because of the objectives I shared in the last question. I want to meet people. I want to interact with people. And that does require me, you know, putting content out there that I think will resonate with people. And I want to push the envelope. I do want to experiment. I do want to do some new and different types of content that might not resonate with a lot of people. So what I'm learning is staying true to myself, following my own inspiration, and not getting too wrapped up in the numbers. So I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you've made it this far, and like, wow, thank you. Thank you for joining me. I mean, truly, it means a lot to me. And I hope you can feel that, and you can feel that from me right now. I will see you all in the next video. So much love until then. Bye.